After Marjorie Taylor Greene introduced a motion to expel him from his position, Republican Speaker Mike Johnson went on the Fox Propaganda Network and unconvincingly referred to Greene as a friend. A few days later, Greene went on a MAGA podcast and referred to Johnson as a deep state asset and said that every Republican hates him. So much for friendship. But before we unpack all that, if you end up liking this video and you want to support the channel, please be sure to hit the like, subscribe, and alert bell before you go. I'd greatly appreciate it. All right, friends, so this is another video about the chaos and disarray and dysfunction of the House Republican Conference, which is currently experiencing a one-seat majority after the various resignations that have hit the conference. Now, Mike Johnson, the Republican Speaker of the House, is a terrible guy. He is a fascistic theocrat. He wants to impose a white nationalist and Christian nationalist worldview on the rest of the country, which is yet another reason why Democrats need to win the 2024 election, not just in terms of the presidency, but also both chambers of Congress, right, to keep this guy out of power. But he also has an unenviable job. I won't pretend otherwise. He's also helped create that job to be unenviable, right? He played a role in it. But he's trying right now currently to hold the Republican conference together, and it's kind of like herding cats. And he recently conducted an interview, or was the participant of an interview, with former Congressman Trey Gowdy, right? Who, this guy isn't just a Fox News host. He's a former congressman himself, and he's been very critical of how the House Republican Conference has conducted itself, as well as the dysfunction within the conference. And they had a really interesting exchange. And the most interesting part is how Johnson unconvincingly referred to the woman who is trying to kick him out of his job.
Speaker, there is a pending motion to vacate from a member from Georgia, which sort of illustrates where we are politically. We lost 2 Senate seats in Georgia. Republicans did, 2 eminently winnable Senate seats. I would think members' time would be better spent looking to reclaim those 2 Senate seats in Georgia, as opposed to hanging the sword of Damocles over your head. But you're on Easter recess right now. How does it help the GOP grow the majority to be talking about a motion to vacate instead of talking about the border or inflation or other issues that are better for the GOP? How does this motion to vacate help win back the majority or win a bigger majority?
I don't think it does. And I think all of my other Republican colleagues recognize this is a distraction from our mission. Again, the mission is to save the Republic. And the only way we can do that is if we grow the House majority, win the Senate, and win the White House. So we don't need any dissension right now. Look, Marjorie Taylor Greene filed the motion. It's not a privileged motion, so it doesn't move automatically. It's just hanging there. And she's frustrated. She and I exchanged text messages even today. We're going to talk early next week. Marjorie's a friend. She's very frustrated about, for example, the last appropriations bills. Guess what? So am I. As we discussed, Trey, these are not the perfect pieces of legislation that you and I and Marjorie would draft if we had the ability to do it differently. But with the smallest margin in U.S. history, we're sometimes going to get legislation that we don't like. And the Democrats know that when we don't all stand together with our razor-thin majority, then they have a better negotiation position. And that's why we got some of the things we didn't like. Now, we fought like warrior poets to keep some of those Senate appropriations or some of those Senate earmarks out of the bill. And we were successful in getting a lot of the terrible stuff out. But a few of them made it through, and that's what Marjorie's upset about, and I am too. But I want to talk with her about reforming the budgeting and spending process going forward. That's what Republicans are for. That's the transformational kind of changes that we can forge if we all stand together.
Right. So again, historically speaking, the expression was Democrats fall in love, Republicans fall in line. And generally speaking, for most of modern history, that was the case until Donald Trump. And then Donald Trump created so many fractures within the Republican Party with his stupidity and narcissism and losing streak. I mean, but my God, what a loser that man is, besides the 2016 election. Every election cycle since then, under his watch, Republicans have accrued L after L after L. I say that the Republican alphabet is 26 L's. So again, Mike Johnson is experiencing something relatively new that Democrats used to struggle with all the time, which is, again, trying to herd cats in a relatively large tent. But Mike Johnson has contributed to the extremism, which has made it so. But again, what's so funny about all this is he's trying to, hey, listen, sure, she's trying to fire me, so to speak. Sure, she's trying to get me ousted from my position. Sure, she has said some really incendiary things about me, but I mean, it's just what friends do. We're friends. We're buddies. We texted earlier today. I texted her Happy Easter. She texted me a selfie with her middle finger extended. It's basically the same. And if you had any doubts about how unconvincing that was, I'm going to refer you to an example of what Marjorie Taylor Greene has to say about Mike Johnson 2 or 3 days after Johnson appeared on Trey Gowdy's show on Fox News. This is how she describes her friend, Mike Johnson.
Yes, ma'am.
Steve, I'll tell you, I was at the tire shop here in my hometown of Rome, Georgia today, and people were asking me about it. They're outraged. Everywhere I go in my district, everyone is so angry at Mike Johnson. And one guy said it to me like this. He goes, do they have Mike Johnson's wife tied up somewhere and have a gun to her head? What is wrong with Mike Johnson? And everything you just explained, people can't even comprehend who he is and what he is doing. But I'll put it to you like this. I think he's been promoted to be the senior partner at the firm. And you know what that means. He is not working for Republicans. He is not helping Republicans. He's not even listening to Republicans. He is doing the very dirty work of the deep state, and it happens fast and shocking. Let me give you guys.
So, Mike Johnson, yeah, Marjorie and I are friends. What's Marjorie think about Mike Johnson? He's a deep state asset who's acting like his wife is being held hostage by Democrats, and he's giving them everything they want. And everyone in my district, they're so mad at him. They hate his guts. It's such a joke. That's the disconnect here. So I just love how Mike Johnson went on a limb and tried to assure the American people that this is all just part of it. This is growing pains. It's just like common, fractures and rough edges that go along with trying to build a coalition. But Marjorie Taylor Greene clearly sees it differently. She doesn't see Mike Johnson as a friend. She seriously and obviously doesn't see him as an adequate leader for the Republican Party. Although what she doesn't realize, because she's even more extreme in certain respects than he is and less practical, is that any Republican in Mike Johnson's position, be it Kevin McCarthy, whom she favored, by the way, or Mike Johnson or anybody else, would not be able to impose their will on the rest of Congress, let alone the federal government as a whole, because they're operating from a position of weakness. They barely control one chamber of one branch by one seat. The House Democrats are infinitely more organized. Even the moderates and progressive caucus, they work together much better. The Senate has its act together, relatively speaking. Senate Republicans and Senate Democrats work together better, arguably, than House Republicans work with each other. And then you have a Democratic president. They want to be the tail that wags the dog. And she just doesn't understand that that's not how it works. It can't be how it works. And that's why they keep running into this problem, inevitably, no matter who's in charge. But I'll also point out, I think it's the Lincoln Project dropped this ad, which kind of encapsulated the recent stupidity and dysfunction of the GOP, which serves as a nice cherry on top of the sundae between Mike Johnson and Marjorie Taylor Greene. Let's take a look.
What the hell are the Republicans doing? Kevin McCarthy abandoned you, Ken Buck abandoned you, and Mike Gallagher just announced on Friday that he's going to resign.
The majority is down to just one. Seems like Republicans are in complete disarray.
Feels like these guys are basically walking out and giving you all the finger.
Hope future Speaker Hakeem Jeffries sent you a nice fruit basket today.
I filed the motion to vacate today. The clock has started. It's time for our conference to choose a new speaker.
What person that can pass a competency test would want to be the Speaker of the House?
The Freedom Caucus right now has been a disaster.
I feel we are seeing yet another tantrum by a tiny faction.
God help us. The House Republican majority is a dysfunctional embarrassment.
It's like trying to herd cats.
You think your job in life is to grandstand and complain while the other team runs over you?
This is why conservatives call the GOP the stupid party, by the way.
They are still very dangerous, to be sure, and incredibly fascistic and authoritarian, but certainly stupid and terrible at governing, objectively speaking, infinitely inferior to elected Democrats, which is why I would recommend that if you're an eligible voter, you should remember all of this and vote blue in November. Let me know what you think in the comments.